Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the Creator Economy for B2B. Hello and welcome today to Not Just Ads, the Creator Economy for B2B. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Irina Jordan. Irina has a number of years' experience in the demand generation marketing space, leading revenue-driven marketing in most recently in the restaurant tech space, where she leads demand gen at Chowly. She's built a number of MarTech and demand gen systems across the number of different companies where she's worked at. And most recently, she's heads up demand gen at Chowly, who are in the restaurant tech space. It's a really exciting space, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you today. Irina, thanks very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Marcus. I'm really excited to be talking to you.
Great. Maybe you could take us back and just how did you get to where you are today? How did you get into this space and arrive in heading up demand gen in Chowly? Was it something that you always wanted to get into in terms of marketing and B2B marketing, or how did you arrive here?
It was an organic progression because, again, my background is marketing, CMO, VP of marketing. That's kind of comes with the territory. But I think the raging debate about, the role of marketing, the role of brand, what is demand gen, MQL versus SQL, kind of a never dying conversation, and a lot of people get very riled up about it. I come that from a more of a revenue team as one. And for me, demand gen does encapsulates that as a discipline. And while it does have all the marketing components, it sets the priorities in such a fashion that unites the revenue team versus sales, versus customer success, versus marketing. So the conversation changes. And for me, that's been compelling. And that's why there was a very intentional transition into just more of a kind of broad marketing into more of a demand gen, because again, that keeps you really disciplined and focused and keeps you part of the team versus you versus them.
Yeah, totally. How do you see it then? Because there's always these kind of trends in marketing. Like if we look at probably 10 years ago, the big thing was around MQLs and white papers and people, tradition B2B. It was all about education through white papers, but it was behind, they had to fill in their lead and so on. And now some people are kind of going for the more open content, educate people, and then when they're in market, they'll reach out. It's harder to measure that in terms of the effectiveness until they come into market. But from where you see it with these kind of trends, how do you see that since it's evolved? Is it evolved into something more effective, or is there just something unknown and we have to be kind of okay with that and we kind of have to experiment and try and reiterate and see what works best?
It's the whole term of dark social. And I'm like, cute. For me, it's just more again, and there's a lot of debate about brand. And coming from the person demand gen, it might be counterintuitive, but I do believe that brand does set you apart because everything else then is easier because you already have kind of the part of the buyer's journey, even if you're not holding that person's hand or that company's or those stakeholders' hand. So from my perspective, you just have to be in tune with what your audience is and whether they trust and respect your brand. And I know there's competitive analysis and there is content marketing. I do not believe in MQLs. I think it's empty calories. And that's actually been my thinking for the past 5 years because that's where the most contentious debates happen between marketing and sales, the whole handoff of leads. So from my perspective is look at your company as a brand and what it represents. Be part of the team. You're not just like the sole survivor and, kind of trying to make it to the top. And just be attuned of how it's all evolving. I know every conversation now starts with AI or AI tools or AI agents. Or did you do some vibe coding? For me, it goes back to fundamentals. It always has what your brand represents, how it comes across for humans and for machines, and then you structure your environment around that. So again, nothing fancy. How the buyer perceives you.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. How do you see it then in terms of with getting finance teams on board with that? you were saying that like you don't believe in MQLs being actually something that's functional and tangible signal to effectiveness. But how do you then monitor or kind of use leading metrics to say like, okay, look, we're going in the right direction, and kind of relay that then to finance to say, look, we're actually creating demand here and it's going to mature or whenever it's going to be realized. In the short term, what are the kind of signals that you share internally to kind of say, okay, we're on the right track here?
Actually, I'm very pragmatic about that. And working closely with my sales team, they decide what the SQL is. I don't get
Yep.
it. So for me, even if they get an inbound lead, they have an opportunity to disqualify it if it's not the right ICP. So it will never become an SQL, even if that person requested a demo, which technically in a classical term, it's SQL, it's SQL, and it's not. So for
Yeah.
me, first one, my measurement is how many inbound leads are coming in that are actually qualified by my sales team as somebody who fits our ideal customer profile and they're talking to and has a really high probability of closing success. And then another example, for example, trade shows or anything that's kind of in person, I look at the cost, kind of, like with colleges, COA, cost of attendance, the same
Yeah.
thing, booth, travel,
Yep.
meals, swag, whatever that is. And then it has to be 3x or 5x of closed deals directly attributed to that event, or we're not doing it. And
Yep.
that actually forces conversations of, oh, we've done this event for 7 years. I'm like, wonderful. So we spend X amount of dollars. What's the deals that I can attribute to so we can do very basic math? And if there is not, it's not happening, it's not coming across, it is not
Yeah.
happening. So those
Yeah.
are very, when you talk data and numbers and just having that very revenue driven conversation, because brand is my work, but the outputs of what I've done around demand gen or trade shows or email or socials or edit, it's irrelevant. The outputs of what kind of book of business our sales team is generating, how those people are onboarding, is our CES having really smooth experience. That is technically how the work that we do on the demand gen marketing space gets kind of evaluated and curated, again, as part of the revenue team.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you say as well, kind of stats and facts. If you look at it that way, it just really narrows down the conversation rather than like, okay, potentially this person is going to be at this event or this trade show, so we need to be there. But if the numbers don't add up, it doesn't make sense. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Curious to see from your perspective then, in terms of actual like brand plays and stuff. What have you seen? What's quite effective in terms of what you've seen working well over the last couple of years?
A combination of being digital and in person, again, for me, does have that intangible component, which again, I don't bring into the final metrics, but for me, it is a gauge of, do you know who we are? Do you know what we do? Does it fit into what you're looking for? And that was a conversation best to have at trade shows, like curated dinners, or when you go, like we just came back from the mastermind where there were like 100 Russian operators coming from mastermind, and we were part of the sponsorship lineup for that, but it allowed us to spend 3 days talking to the Russian operators who get it, how to run the business profitably. And we were talking about the pain points, the tech stack, the COGS versus labor versus like the formulas that they have to go. That gives you kind of the insight into how they think about it. And then digitally, you have to really structure the journey through your sites, through your socials, if you send them email marketing or whatever else there is, in such a way that really fits their language and how, again, they think about you, and it augments that experience. You can't really control their thinking, but you can help them to be
Yeah.
directed, and you have to be accessible in the variety of formats. So that's why it's digital. And I do believe that personal, and I prefer smaller things, regional, more niche, because then you have people who are not overwhelmed by gazillion booths and they're overstimulated by just the sheer size of it. Those are vanity events. You want something
Yeah.
that's a bit more focused and more kind of drilled down, where you actually have really good conversations with people that you want to learn from.
Yeah. In your case, then, so maybe you could tell us a little bit, the audience, a little bit about Chowly. I know it's in the restaurant tech space, but just for those that are maybe not familiar with that space, maybe you could just tell us a little bit more where you're positioned within the category and what you offer exactly in that space.
Restaurants are a tough category, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
I buy people who are willing to run businesses. And we made a very conscious choice as a company at Chowly to focus on independent restaurant owners, which it means it's that mom and pop shop you go to. They might
Yep.
have one location, they might have two locations. The most they might have like 1 to 5, but they own it. It's their sweat equity. You can see them mopping the floor. They're not McDonald's, they're not Chick-fil-A. They're the people who actually in the business and they're running it and they're training the staff and they're looking like they're doing everything. It is
Yep.
a very tough category. You're kind of doing the metrics of tough and tough. That's tough and tough
Yeah,
because
I can
it's
imagine.
SMB and it's restaurants. And in
Yeah.
our case, we came up with the Chowly platform that allows them to really level up their stakes with more corporate entities and with more sophisticated restaurant businesses, where we make sure their website is optimized, their Google business profile, which is the gateway for most Google searches, as well as Google Maps. Type place near me. That's what you have to be found for. We'll help them with the SEO, with the Google ads. And for us, the goal is for them to really focus on what they love the most and take that off the plate. So we really help, we call it the digital storefront, where they do have the audience that physically comes to their storefront or to their brick and mortar. But, ordering from their website, there is third party. I'm sure you do DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats. That's kind of like the native behavior these days, especially post-pandemic. So we want to make sure they get found in the right shape, that the people choose them. And when they're looking for the restaurant organically, they get found for what they're looking for. And that's our goal for them. But again, some B restaurants, I admire those people. The sweat equity is unbelievable. Just dealing with labor,
Yeah.
customers, food, stack. That's like you kind of just putting everything together, and then some things you can control and some you can't. So for me,
Yeah.
those operators are amazing.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to see because it's something that's the lifeblood of many countries. Particular restaurants that are not chains, they have a particular type of a menu or particular type of food or so on. It gives you a real insight into the city and the area as well. How as the business works then, is it like a productized service that you provide to them then, that you sell it based on a productized service on a retention base?
Yeah, it's a SaaS model, software as a service, and that's actually my core competency because I am new to restaurant tech. I'm going on 2 years. Before that was medical device. Before that was real estate. Before was finance. So my core competency and the whole go-to market is software as a service. That is the discipline, again, talking about fundamentals. Yes, the industry might be unique, but you have to be really in tune with the fundamentals of software as a service. So it's a monthly payment, particular kind of commitment, and not because you want them to be a partner, that kind of that equitable exchange and dialogue where it's not just you're a vendor. You want to be a partner, especially in the restaurant where for them, digital storefront means so much. It's literally the income flow. So from my perspective, that's the best model, where you have this monthly recurring relationship where it's value based and you looking at it, you don't just like pay and then you're washing your hands. It is the relationship you build over time, and the lifetime customer value is determined by how this value is built over time.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting as well because it's like, think if you look at Google, I think as a restaurant, if you rank below a certain rating, I would imagine there's a very strong correlation between the business that you'll generate. So it's something that's crucial, really, to be able to rank really high there, I guess. But are there other things in terms of how they can be effective with their online presence, but even leaning into that not SMB, but more like kind of that they're independent? Are there any kind of like, what would I say, communities or anything like that that identifies independent restaurants versus chains in the US that they kind of can get marketing off the back of that?
Google is your pretty much traffic controller.
Right.
People go and say, I want X near me.
Yeah.
They're not going to look for some special directory. We're
Yeah.
just too lazy for that. So
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
us, being very, very in tune with, regardless of what Perplexities and JetGPIs and Claudes
Yeah.
are doing and Geminis, Google's still driving those organic searches for the restaurants.
Yeah.
That's why the website and how it's structured and being respectful of those Google rules that everybody
Yeah.
kind of figuring out. And Google business profile and Google Maps, all the schema backup, how it's structured, Google reviews, 4.5 and above, you're golden. It's like, your credit score. What's your
Yeah.
credit
Yeah.
score? That will determine your interest rate. It's the same for restaurant. And that's
Yeah.
why reviews matter so much. And you really have to be on top of it, not just from the human perspective, but also how you show up in search results, which category you pick. Do you have pictures? Now you have ability to promote certain events in your restaurant that was just released for multi-loc, which we call multiple locations. Like there is so much things, and that's why I'm like, as a restaurant operator, I want to have a trusted partner to be able to help with that, because I'm in marketing and I have to keep up with Google, and that's my
Yeah.
job. For them, it's like 10% of what they have to be doing. So
Yeah.
for now, it's still Google. No matter what
Yeah.
people say,
They still control it.
it's still Google.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I remember looking at a documentary not so long ago, and they talked about Michelin star restaurants and how you probably know this story about the actual guide, how the Michelin star guide was created by Michelin Tire because they wanted people to actually go out and use their car to drive to restaurants. So they created this guide. So I don't know, maybe there's something like that, like for independent restaurants, if there's some kind of a guide or something. But I guess like what you say, depending on how people use, they reach for their phone and they look at Google Maps. I know that's what I do anyway.
Food are seeking out Michelin stars. People are
Yeah.
looking for convenience and
Yep.
whether they feel like going out or sitting in
Yeah.
their pajamas and getting food delivered, and whether that restaurant can accommodate delivering from their website or they have to go to third party, which is DoorDash and the like.
Yeah.
It's all about convenience and ease, and then food, of course. So that kind of like this arbitrage is always ongoing, and you have to be in top shape as a physical establishment, as your physical storefront, but you also have to be in top shape as a digital storefront. Not to
Yeah.
be sloppy with your menu, not to be sloppy with your hours, with your holiday hours, with how your pictures are coming across. Like,
Yeah.
again, it's a lot of pressure.
It is, yeah, for sure. How, in terms of for your business then at Chowly, how do you look at kind of acquisition then in terms of when you sign up restaurants? What are the effective ways that you do? You mentioned about like kind of niche events and stuff like that, but are there specific channels or specific ways that you look at in terms of the ICP that you have? I guess it's some places it's like it's not huge staff, so I guess it's one decision or two decision makers normally. No.
It is. It's primarily it's the owner or the manager. Like the management structure in independent restaurant is very, very, very like one tier, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll be shocked to know that it's phone,
Yep.
it's text, and
Yep.
it's in person. Email, like remote,
Yeah.
social, you cannot find them on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Only
Yeah.
again, top producers, corporate
Yeah.
people who it's their job, not actually their business. So all that nuance needs to be taken into account when people giving you best practices on LinkedIn. I'm like, cute does not work for me.
Yeah.
Awesome does not work for me. There is no like LinkedIn navigator for my mom and pop
Restaurant
shop
owners.
in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to really build trust. And I used to work at influencer marketing agency a few years back. And for me, that background also helpful because we collaborate with coaches, with consultants, because they have access to restaurants and that kind of their ear. And that's why we went to this mastermind last week, because we want to be part of this community who understands what it takes to run operations smartly and not just grinding. So influencer marketing actually is very effective, but it's a very, again, different approach to that, where we're not like hiring creators, we're just partnering with people who have access and the ear of those restaurant operators, where we get to be partners in that conversation.
Yeah. That's really interesting, actually. Maybe you could just talk a little bit more about that, because you mentioned about the mastermind and about creators. Then what is it how did that come about in terms of, is it that they're providing a service to the restaurant owners and you kind of like going, okay, well, look, they're servicing them, so maybe we can have some collab? Or how did something like that come about?
Yes, it's very straightforward. Some of them have podcasts and you kind of get involved with that. Some of them have masterminds or they have mastermind clients and you're like, are you having those events that we can be part of? Sometimes we collaborate on social media where kind of like featuring something and we work with them, being part of the content on their website, having webinars, which now nobody says webinar, we're saying virtual workshop. Because webinar is very quaint. So you say, virtual mastermind, virtual workshop, not webinar. But again, that content driven where we have access to our customer base and they have access to theirs, and there is a complementary overlap. For me, that collaboration, again, I wanted to be not one-off. I wanted to be a long terms. For some coaches, we've been working that for a number of years. Like when I came in, I'm like, who are the people in the industry? And I just sent cold outreach. I'm like, I want to talk to you. I saw your book, listen to your podcast. Let's have a conversation. And I don't think that's been done. But again, coming from other industries and other experiences really sets you up with people where they like don't expect that. So I had access to a lot of people even when I started in this particular professional endeavor, where I ended up talking to them and they qualified me and Chowly, and I qualified them, but it was a very kind of quick and organic. And then I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
we can work on this together because there is definitely a fit.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one because really, if you go into so if I understand correctly, you've identified, say, the influencer slash creator, and they, as a part of their network, they may run like a mastermind or something like that. And within that mastermind, there are people that are restaurant owners.
Oh,
So
that's all restaurant owners. The only coaches that
okay,
they only
right.
work with restaurant operators.
Right, interesting. And so then as a result, then obviously they're talking about the operations and yours, it's a win-win really because
Mm-hmm.
you're not kind of competing with each other, but it's more
Nope.
complementary. That's I think that's a really good example as well of like identifying where your niche audience is and how you can actually tap into that as well effectively.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. That's a great yeah, it's a great point that you make. When you mentioned then as well about like kind of workshops and stuff like that, are you looking at like those potential ICPs or restaurant owners are on those workshops, or are you creating content around it and then kind of trying to distribute it to that in targeted niche groups like you mentioned, or both, or what way do you normally approach that?
I usually partner with, we actually have a very extensive network of partners because we are integrated. It's called POS, point of sale. So you've heard of Square.
Yeah,
There is Toast, there is Spot On, there is Cloud. There are so many, but Square is really well known just because it's so like everywhere. Those are point of sales in restaurants. That's how they
yep,
take you when they bring your your
yeah, yeah,
handheld. You
sure,
can see which company they're using,
gotcha,
which
yeah,
is a
yeah,
curse and a blessing because now I always have to look at it and I'm like, oh, okay, so I know what, like it's
yeah.
professional hazard.
Square is
Anyhow, but
part of Jack Dorsey, no? It's is
yes,
he?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep. Block is a bigger company and then kind
yeah,
of, yes. So we actually partner with our, on top of the influencer marketing, working with creators, we actually closely work with POS systems. Like we had a workshop with the head of product and we talked about what Square's been doing, how we're working with them, and that attracts their audience and attracts our. So I don't believe that you have to do everything by yourself. I mean, yes, but what are other complementary pieces that you can bring to the equation that can help it easier? I mean, Square is way bigger, so I'm like, we might as well kind of tap into this partnership where
yeah,
it benefits them and it benefits us in a very complementary fashion. And I don't do the pray and spray kind of thing. It's very focused. I don't mind having a smaller audience because then you can have really good conversation, whether it's in person, which we had workshops at regional events. That was part of the things that I negotiated. I'm like, I want to be on the stage and talking to those people. Or it's a digital, and then you partner with people or companies that have extra visibility. I mean, why? Like, you got to be smart about things. I mean, you add the benefit you bring to the table, you put up the landing page, you do all the work, you do all, like they don't have to do anything, they're just
yep,
collaborating with you. So
yep.
it makes it an easy yes for a company where they have so much on their plate. We're like, we'll do all the work. We just want this person, and those are the talking points, and we do all the, and they're like, okay, that's easy. Like it's
Yeah.
literally like you can get really, really big names and companies to work with you if you're not adding more work on their plate.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So you would basically have a slot within their session, so to say, and then you basically take care of all the preparation in terms of the landing pages and everything like that. So they see that as like, okay, look, this is kind of a
Yes, or
no-brainer. We're
we
given a
organize our
30-minute slot.
own and we feature
Yeah.
them as a speaker.
Gotcha. Right. They know it's really effective, I think, from what you say of like just knowing where that audience is. And I think sometimes people miss that of like they try and do something standalone. But if you can actually partner and you both are contributing something that's relevant to the audience, it's kind of a win-win. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'd love to talk a little bit more then in terms of like the B2B space of what you see it like in restaurant tech at the moment. Like everything is getting digitalized, obviously with AI and everything like that. Like that's obviously a given. But where do you see in terms of like in the actual particular space of like kind of say restaurant tech now? What do you see over the next say 5 years that are like kind of the big opportunities for companies where you are at the moment or in this space overall?
There is massive consolidation happening this year. It's been very like fascinating to see where you don't even expect that company to acquire this company, and then you have to kind of see it and like do the whole matrix analysis. I'm like, wow, this is so meta. Why that it's not like a strict map out. It's
Yeah.
almost projecting into the future of what, like DoorDash was very aggressive with acquisitions this year. There are companies who like umbrella companies that you never heard of, but they have like other, like they start buying POS and then
Yeah.
some other thing and like delivery platform. You're like, wow, they're like creating this
It's
360
it,
experience. So there will
yeah.
be a lot of consolidation. And that's why for us, the Chowly platform, we wanted to kind of own the digital storefront space so we can stand on our own feet without like heavily
Yeah.
depending on other pieces when the operator looks at their tech stack. But this is not slowing down. And again, it's a much more sophisticated. Restaurant tech is very like emotional and complicated and nuanced. And what you think is a POS is no longer a POS, which is point of sale. Grubhub just rolled out grocery delivery. Like there is so much happening. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to find your place in it and have your your moat around yourself
Yeah.
and your beachhead secure so you know how you fit into this very crazy environment.
Yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. In B2B marketing, then, from what you see, trends in that, like where do you see things going in terms of what you mentioned and looking at the niche and focusing on the niche and partnerships? Anything else that you see kind of like being a trend in the next couple of years? You also, your background in influencer marketing as well. Any predictions or what you see, where you see that space evolving over the next few years?
I think there will be swing back to human because right
Yeah,
now there's a lot of optimization and agentic work and piecing your rev ops into a very streamlined fashion and less people, more automation. Again, back to fundamentals, human to human piece will never go away. So
yeah,
for me, there is a swing to this, really but I think we're kind of starting to reach saturation point where people realize they can have tools, but not actual workflow.
yeah,
Like it's still getting there. And there is so much conversation. Like every time, all the Slack channels, all the dinners, all the networking, that's conversation. So for me, the whole B2B is still H to H. So for me, it's
yeah,
like, did you cover your fundamentals? What's your brand is standing for? So if there is a ChatGPT involved, what is the story that ChatGPT is telling? Really strong reliance on Google, really strong reliance on your ambassadors, your advocates, your champions, people who support you, your partners. Like, what is your kind of community that's supporting you? So for me, it comes back to humans. No matter how optimized we get, you
yeah,
really have to keep, and to the point of content creation or to the point of how you're developing your attribution or your channels, again, do have your experience play a role and don't give up your authority and your autonomy to something that might be quicker, not always better, but you have to really kind of come in and be that curator of how you want your brand to be represented and how you structure processes around it.
yeah. It makes a lot of sense, because there's kind of two trails of thought I think of. There is like the AI slash agentic slash go to market RevOps engineers that everything can be automated. It's just about refining your data, and once you tweak it, then you have endless supply of leads. And I think anyone that's worked in either marketing or even in a commercial role, they know that that's all based on that we presume that everyone behaves in a linear way and that we all follow the same rules and the same processes, and that's not the case. But I think getting the more face time that you spend with customers is, at least from my perspective anyway, it's key. It's where you really learn the most.
That's right.
Irina, this was a really great conversation. I'm sorry, there's a light here that the sensor has gone off. It's back on. I really enjoyed talking with you. If anyone wants to connect with you or find your content, where are you most active, on which platforms?
LinkedIn, Irina Jordan, I'll be the top results. I have like
Great,
over 21,000 followers. I post frequently. Again, I don't do the crazy LinkedIn crazy influencer content where you have like, no. If I feel posting something or I have a great picture or a story, I will post. But I
great,
love, love, love LinkedIn. So that's the easiest way to
great.
find me.
Great, perfect. We'll put it in the show notes as well. And thanks again for talking to us today, Irina. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise. Thank you, Marcus. It's been a pleasure.